Let us talk to Dov Forman. He is an author, and he says, the Jewish ambassador says, London is less safe for Jews than Israel. I find that hard to believe, but what you've just told us earlier, I'm beginning to think you might have something in it. Dov, good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Dov.
Do you really believe that?
I think Jews across the world feel very unsafe at the moment. Anti-Semitism in the UK has risen by over 1,000%. We've seen anti-Semitism not only rise in London, but also across the UK, across Europe and in America. In France today, we saw a woman in her 30s being stabbed and then being daubed on her door. And these are frightening scenes similar to what we saw in the 1930s, in the 1940s, in Nazi Germany. So I think there is a reason for Jewish people to be scared. We've seen so many remain silent. We've seen tens of thousands of people go out on our streets campaigning for violence, and not everyone on these marches is calling for violence. But when we hear things like Intifada until victory or Intifada revolution being shouted on the underground, we've seen what an Intifada might mean on the underground in the London Underground bombings. We've seen what an Intifada might mean on the streets of the United Kingdom.
Why? Sorry to interrupt, Dov. Why do people come from other cultures, other countries, who don't approve of the way we behave and the way we live over here? Why on earth do they come here and everybody want to live here? I mean, the most ridiculous thing I saw, we mentioned earlier, is queers for Palestine. I mean, if you
they want to come here and change it to their way of life, you know.
Yeah, I'm talking about why would you, if you were gay, say, you know,
I don't know.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think people don't understand the situation. Everyone wants to see Palestinians, especially Jewish people, the Israelis, live in a better society with a government that isn't Hamas. Everyone wants to see them being able to live in a society that appreciates difference, that appreciates minority. But Hamas spells out their ideology in their founding charter, and that's violently and proudly anti-Semitic, but also violently and proudly anti-minority and anti-difference. And these people, queers for Palestine, clearly don't understand what the situation there is in Palestine. And also to those calling for a ceasefire, they clearly don't understand. Firstly, there was a ceasefire until the morning of October 7th, but also in calling for a ceasefire, the Palestinian cause won't be bettered. And a message to all those who ripped down the posters of those who are kidnapped now in Gaza, the over 230 Israelis who are being held hostage in Gaza. By ripping down those posters, you don't further the Palestinian cause. In fact, you only set it back. And everyone wants to see peace. And the only way to achieve that is by removing Hamas from the helm.
Dov, can I just ask you quickly, and I know you want to ask a question, Lizzie, as well. Why on earth do they say that the ceasefire held when, as far as I know, that the Hamas terrorists were continually, during the ceasefire, firing rockets into Israel indiscriminately?
Yes, I think we've seen rockets throughout the past few years since the ceasefire was declared, but I think the difference here is, of course, on the 7th of October, thousands of terrorists infiltrated, woke up, armed themselves with Kalashnikovs and infiltrated into Israel, going in to towns, bedrooms, murdering civilians on their beds. And of course, that is a clear break of the ceasefire. And again, those calling for a ceasefire simply don't understand the situation. A ceasefire would only allow Hamas to regroup and commit more terror. And when we see, and as a Jewish person here in the streets of London, when I don't feel safe at the moment on the streets of London, when we see people like our mayor, the mayor of London, calling for a ceasefire, that makes us worried. And it shows us that people like the mayor of London don't understand the severity of this situation at the moment.
Sav, let me show you this clip from earlier on today, and then I'd like your response to it. Have a look at this. Dov, your thoughts?
I couldn't really hear the video firstly, but I have seen it unfortunately on Twitter, and the scenes that we are seeing on the streets of London at the moment, every Saturday, weekly protest, anti-Jewish.
It was the From the River to the Sea chant. I mean, do you wear outward signs of being Jewish when you're out and about?
You can see here my kippah. I refuse to take off my kippah. My great-grandmother survived Auschwitz-Birkenau, not so that someone like me, her great-grandson, could be terrorised out of wearing a kippah on the streets of London. She came to the UK in the hope that the Western liberal values of freedom of religion would be upheld.
Have you had any problems out in the streets?
I have. And when people call for free Palestine, they think, whilst they might be well-intentioned, actually what they're calling for is a genocide against the Jews in the state of Israel. And
who do you blame for that, by the way? Because I'm blaming a lot of it on the education of our children over the last 10, 15 years.
Unfortunately, we've seen radicalization allowed to go unchecked in the university campuses, people who want to eradicate Israel from the map but probably can't even place it on a map. And to answer your question, I have unfortunately seen anti-Semitism on the streets. I myself, outside my university, the University College London, one of the most famous universities here in London, I was going into university the other week and people were outside, about 20 individuals, Palestinian flags. There's no problem of waving a Palestinian flag, but there is a problem of waving a Palestinian flag in support of the terror atrocities that we witnessed. And they were screaming Intifada until victory against the Jews in front of Jewish students like myself, and that makes us feel unsafe on campus. And no one should have to feel unsafe in our universities.